All right. I think we're ready to go.
All right, I think we're live.
Yeah.
Well, welcome everybody. This is Mike with plantbaseddiet.org, and we're back with another video with our Director of Mindfulness, XYZo. Welcome, XYZo.
Hey, thank you for having me, Mike.
Of
I'm
course.
excited to be back. Yeah.
Yeah, this is a very important video, I think. Very important for everyone, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Talking about life purpose, because we've done a number of videos that have kind of been building up to this. And if you guys haven't seen all the videos, they're probably available where you're watching them now in the video history, or you can go to our YouTube behind me over here, YouTube channel, plantbaseddiet.org. They're in there. But this is the big one. It's life purpose, passion, and plant-based bliss. And the focus on that, I guess, that passion and that purpose, that's so important. And of course, just a plant-based lifestyle. So what can you tell us about all of this? What do we need to know? If we don't know our purpose, how can we find it out? All these questions. We have so many questions.
Excellent. Yeah. So there's definitely a lot within all these topics. And truly, a lot of these subjects one has to experience and discover for themselves. Certainly, there are ways to go about it, but I don't know that experiencing one's purpose and embodying that, or one's passion, igniting this, or experiencing bliss. I don't know if there's so much a formula, of what could work for everybody, but certainly I can share some of my own insights, into how I've gone about experiencing this and some other things that I've studied up on as well. So yeah, I'm excited to share.
All right.
But we'll begin with the life purpose. And so a life purpose is essentially a North Star. It is an anchor, a guiding force in one's life, and is essentially the framework through which one can go about living. And the beautiful thing about purpose is that truly, irregardless of whatever situation you find yourself in, one can realign to one's purpose,
okay,
and can still experience a sense of fulfillment with it. And so, for example, when I say purpose, I'm speaking a little more big picture, conceptually, rather than something more concrete, as if, like, not speaking about a specific job or a specific role.
Not a task. It's not a task oriented.
Yes, absolutely. Well, to a degree. So I'll share what I believe to be my purpose.
All right.
And essentially, actually, before I get into that, a purpose, in my perspective, can be synonymous to a kind of blend of a mission and vision statement. So a mission statement being, what you are and why you are, usually in relation to a business or an organization, but we can use this individually too. And then a vision statement, what you're striving to be and become. And so my purpose I define as increasing the levels of compassion, creativity, confidence, care, and connection in individuals through community, increasing the vibration collectively, or something to this notion.
Yeah.
And so the reason why something a little more big picture like that is more fun, because it allows me to really be living out that purpose in a multitude of ways. So for example, I'm a yoga instructor. I've also done some work with a family restaurant. I've done some nonprofit stuff here as well, and some other organizations, and other little miscellaneous like gigs and tasks, whatnot. And basically, in each of those things, I can put it under the context of this purpose. So whether I'm working, let's just say arbitrarily, as a server in a restaurant, I can certainly be increasing the levels of compassion and confidence in others
Right.
just by the way and manner in which I speak, how I treat my fellow coworkers, and then obviously the patrons.
Well, actually, I want to mention something there. I
Yeah.
think that sometimes you hear a lot that someone can tell a lot about an individual based on how they treat their server in a restaurant.
Hmm.
So
Certainly, certainly.
you're talking about the
Yeah.
other side of that aspect, but yeah, that would be living out your purpose too. A way to make sure, look at how you treat the servers in restaurants you go to. Uh, that would, if you're not living out how you feel when you're dealing with these folks, there's a
Hmm.
disconnect. And even more so now with restaurants struggling, but that's a whole other episode probably of a show.
Yeah. Indeed. And so essentially, it doesn't matter what I'm doing in life, whatever my job is or my career or my situation, so long as I can put it under the framing and context of my purpose.
Okay.
And now speaking kind of on the other side of purpose, not having a purpose or having perhaps uh, an erroneously, you know, concocted purpose. So that's to say, maybe a purpose that wasn't designed to be most beneficial, to one's living.
What happens in those instances if there's someone out there that maybe has never known their purpose or has lost their way or
Hmm.
changed it up and they don't know what the next step is? Why is it so important to find out purpose?
Hmm. And so essentially, to life, we can respond or react. Things are always going to be happening out of our control, beyond our imagination. Many things will happen that we couldn't have possibly anticipated, such as this whole situation
Yes.
everyone is
Oh yeah.
going through. And so, in having a purpose, one essentially always has a kind of soul safety net. One is always able to, I wouldn't say a purpose fully gives one, or a purpose doesn't give one full peace, but to a degree, absolutely, a purpose can give more peace than not having a purpose whatsoever.
All right.
Let's say, for example, if one didn't have a purpose during this time and they unfortunately got laid off, or whatever the case is, they're no longer working in the capacity they used to. Without a purpose, one might be distraught,
Yeah.
very much so.
Yeah. I've heard that
Like,
people are saying that, I don't know if it's true or people have been expecting that potentially suicide rates would rise during this time. I don't know if
mm,
that's true or not.
yeah, yeah, certainly. Unfortunately, I can see that being more true than not. But essentially, if one did have a purpose and one does have a purpose, then again, it gives one more buffer to experience the ups and downs of life, because whether I lost my job or not, whether I have to move away, whether something totally, outside of my expectations unfold, I know that I'm still living out my purpose, or at least striving to, and that whatever new comes into the mix, I can still connect it to my purpose.
Okay.
And living reactionarily, life can become a little more unpleasant than not. There's certainly a fine balance in between, going with the flow and living consciously with intention and creating life situations for yourself. And I really think it's important for everyone to find that unique blend for themselves. And having a purpose, I believe, is certainly key to living in that balanced state. And also with a purpose, basically, to summarize everything I've been saying, one can live more equanimously. And so basically, always being steady, not really experiencing too much emotional high or low, because at the end of the day, they're connected to their purpose, though.
Right. Right. Actually, another part of purpose that is popping into my mind in this discussion is something I've heard, and I haven't been there myself, so I'm just commenting on things I've heard about retirement. I think a lot of times I've
Mm,
seen and heard that when people retire, specifically men, it's almost like it's a quick downhill from there
mm,
in terms of their overall quality of life. And I think a lot of that is because I think traditionally, at least, men have been wrapped up in their career or their work. And when that goes away, then what's left? You know?
yeah.
So I totally see all these things you're saying. I guess I'm just bringing this up, speaking from a different angle about that.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing that perspective. That's certainly very important. And essentially, our life becomes fulfilling when we're doing work that we find to be meaningful.
Yes.
It can become fulfilling in other ways as well. That's not to say that that's the only way, but certainly it is so. And so, when one goes through retirement, no longer having the day filled with a sort of objective, a mission, a task to move forward on. Certainly in those like in between wavy times, mood can drop tremendously. So because one perspective is that humans are really creatures of movement,
Mhm.
of action. Evolutionarily, we certainly weren't as docile and unengaged as we are today.
Right.
From just being outside, I mean, the elements are just testing alone. From extreme heat to extreme cold to the wetness, dryness, and everything in between, to having to you know move your body great distances just to acquire sustenance, whether food or water. Not experiencing those things these days, you know results in not having quite the same level of access to our energy,
Okay.
which we could,
Well,
because
does that, what you speak of right there, are you describing a person's comfort zone and whether you get out of that or not? Is that an equivalent?
I think it's certainly related. I think it's certainly related. um, I think I was speaking more on the perspective of physical activity,
All right. Yeah.
but definitely comfort zone is related in that, as I've mentioned in a previous video, we can experience happiness through making progress towards our goals. And so, if we have a larger overall goal in life, there are certainly going to be steps that are going to challenge us, that are going to be a little more difficult, that are going to be outside of our perceived abilities within ourselves, and is going to be outside of our area of experience or expertise.
Right.
And all those things relate to comfort zone. So definitely, in being able to move outside of one's comfort zone, growth is experienced, and then from a results of this, a greater sense of happiness. And a quick kind of like zoom out on the kind of like cultural societal notion, you know, and this isn't to sound too like pessimistic about American culture or anything, for I too am American.
Mhm. Yep.
But
Me too.
yeah. But somewhere along the line, materialism definitely became almost like the collective psyche's philosophy.
Mm.
A
Yeah.
kind of hedonistic frame of mind that says the more stuff and physical possession I acquire, the happier I'll be, the better I'll feel about myself, the more powerful and purposeful I am. Which is just all completely
Yes.
false.
Yeah. I think, well, isn't it true that you need a certain level? You need
Yeah.
enough to be able to have a minimum type of a lifestyle, minimum, whatever that is, and to be able to pay your bills. But aside from that, from what I've learned, from the finance side is that nobody ever feels any happier financially once they get above that.
Yeah, yeah. And I do believe that that number, that salary of kind of diminishing returns, is just about 75,000.
Okay.
So this has been studied that, yeah, basically after you make 75,000, there's not really too much additional happiness that
Mm.
one generates from just having the income outright. And I mentioned this because, if one has not examined one's own personal philosophies, mindset, intrinsic beliefs, then this kind of materialistic thinking is almost certainly to be in the mix, to some degree.
Yeah, like you said, the collective psyche, right? That's
Yeah,
the culture, right? That's how
yeah,
I would describe that. Okay.
indeed. And so this is kind of opposite, to the way that these kinds of things are really experienced. For example, going back to the growth and comfort zone and all this and that, those are much more, internal shifts that happen. And in being able, because when I step outside of my comfort zone, it's not only that, I'm doing something new, it's that I've made a decision and a commitment to my growth, and I have conjured enough courage to move forward in that new direction, perhaps in that process abandoning or evolving beyond my self-limiting beliefs that had previously kept me at the certain stage that I was at. Money's not going to do all that.
Right, right.
Definitely an internal job.
Well,
So,
so let me ask you a question on that point you bring up right there. You move beyond your self-limiting beliefs. Is that one way it happens? Because I've heard another way it happens, like when change happens. Let's put it this way, because
mm,
moving out of your comfort zone is a change, right? Any change is moving out of your comfort zone on some level, whether it's yours or somebody else's. And I've heard that, when the pain of staying the same is worse than the pain of changing, that's usually when someone
mm,
changes. Not the only time,
mm,
but you can do it regardless, even if there's that fear or that pain, like you said, if you've determined in your mind, right, that you're going to be able to do this, you've reached that a new level of mental clarity that you can do it. It doesn't have to involve pain or no pain. It's just a movement, a transition.
yeah, yeah. That reminds me of a notion that, change can really come about in two ways, whether a creative process or a destructive process.
Okay.
And so what you're referring to is more so the destructive, when
Right.
the pain of how I experience myself is greater than my, hesitation to grow and move forward. But then the opposite is also true, that change can be done creatively,
Right.
so as in, consciously, intentionally, deliberately, um, with a sense of initiative rather than going back to what I was mentioning before, reacting versus responding. The destruction is more so the reacting, and the creation is more so responding.
I see. That
So
makes sense. Yeah,
yeah,
it does. Okay.
yeah. And so when living out one's purpose, one is able to experience greater degrees of passion.
Mm.
Our next little subject.
Yes.
Mhm. And so why passion is great is because essentially one is able to tap into the flow state to a much greater degree. And so the flow state being a mind state, I suppose you could say, in which the mind is unburdened
Mm.
by its usual heavy processing of thoughts and is able to quiet up and focus in on whatever the task at hand is.
Is that similar to what they say living in the now? Is that what that is?
Yes, yes,
Yes.
yes,
Yeah.
certainly. And going back to some topics we've spoken about in other videos, when, often is the case that when we're depressed, we're living in the past. And then when we're anxious, we're living in the future. So let's say that I have, I'm doing a job, that I don't really care for. And, every day it's the same kind of stuff that, again, I'm not truly interested in.
Mm.
Well, then, anxiety can arise because I'm constantly focused on, finishing the job or the day, getting out of
Just
there.
getting it done. You don't have to deal with it anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Or I'm a little depressed because I'm ruminating on like all the anxious days I've had, doing that kind of job.
Yeah.
And so in flow, when one's passion has been ignited through connecting to one's purpose, I'm present, and I'm here. And from that foundation, bliss can be experienced.
Yeah.
So
Plant-based
yeah,
bliss.
plant-based bliss, baby. Yeah, so bliss is like my top tied favorite word. And in relation to plant-based eating, for me, when I say bliss, I think of a few different things, and one of them is just a sense of lightness, a sense of little mental processing, and just a true heart-centered excitement and gratitude for that moment, or just for your life existence, whatever the case is.
Mm.
And so in relation to plant-based eating, those things that I described, let's say that's something we create. And so in order to create such a state, it would probably be more conducive to have elements of lightness that come together to create that bigger picture. So that's to say, if I'm eating food of an animal who has never experienced 1 second of joy in its life, born into captivity, murdered in captivity.
Yeah.
If I'm, eating food that is the leading cause for deforestation and just overall climate change issues, and if I'm eating this food that's essentially just like propaganda out the wazoo, then I think it might be a little more difficult to experience as bliss.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
That's basically what I'm getting to.
It makes sense. It's like the karmatic effect of that food. It just anything you put into your body is you're taking that in from whatever it was experiencing. Yeah, I understand that.
Yeah, certainly, certainly. I mean, I would highly encourage, everyone to do an experiment for themselves if they're not plant-based already, or even if they are. I'll describe two different experiments,
All right.
which is to say, for pre-vegan peoples, eating a standard, whatever animal product, and then seeing if you can access some local produce, or even something from your own garden or the garden of a friend. Because going back to the energy, essentially, when I'm growing my own food, I have the ability to really pour my love and devotion,
Mm.
into this day by day caring for that produce.
Right.
And so when the day comes to reap that harvest, I'm essentially,
Yeah.
integrating that energy back into me. And then it's
Yes.
just a flow, a cycle that,
Well, that's interesting that you bring that up because I've heard the saying your vibe attracts your tribe. Well,
yeah,
that I've heard that with humans, but I guess it also works with food too. If you're spending time with
yeah,
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 interesting.
yeah, yeah, certainly, certainly. And I mean, so a nice little story. I don't know if it's that nice actually.
Uh-oh.
But
We'll see.
yeah, I first began eating a plant-based diet the summer of 2014. And so I was
I was the
in,
same time frame in there.
nice, nice. Yeah, I was starting to, get more curious and involved with my spiritual process. And I was on Instagram following this page, and I saw a post by him which said, how are you going to try to raise your vibration eating lower vibrational food?
Mm.
So in that moment, I was like, oh, true, I'm vegan. you know,
Yeah.
a little quick shift.
Yeah.
But there have been times since then, more so like in that first year, that I wasn't eating fully vegan. As I like to say sometimes, cheating vegan.
Right. I've heard you say
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
And specifically, I want to share this experience of when I was working at a pub restaurant down in Naples. I was training to. Ultimately, I did not stay around. I was just far too morally conflicted to be
Okay.
serving venomous alcohol and
Mm.
liquor.
Okay.
All my co-servers were just like, yeah, you got to sell them up on the drinks. That's how you'll get your tips and blah 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 blah
That's
blah.
generally the
It's like,
profit in the restaurant industry, right?
right,
The major profit center anyway. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Unfortunately, but alas, as a part of being a server there, I had to experience basically like every food
Mm.
item on the menu.
Okay.
And at that time, that was like summer 2016. So I had already been vegan for a little bit. And, back then, being a little more timid, conflict averse, just like, oh, okay. I chose to eat all these different things.
Hmm.
And thankfully, it wasn't that long and it wasn't that many like eatings, maybe like three, like no more than five, but I can't remember specifically. Um, but I remember very distinctly that the quality of my thoughts changed
Wow.
dramatically when I was eating that food. So I remember one day I had like a little burger sampling, trying they would like cook one dish and then split it up so that all the new trainees could experience multiple things, like a little sample platter.
Yeah.
And I was eating all the burgers, so like good old beef.
Mm.
And I remember the next day, I was just having very violent, aggressive thoughts, like half murderous, whereas I had not experienced thoughts like that in
Right.
years,
Right.
And so
Wow.
like that level of density of aggression, can essentially be pointed back, to one thing. The biggest shift that I had in my experience at that time, which is of course the food,
Yeah, I
so
would tend to agree
definitely.
with that just on a general basis. I don't know. I think I've noticed that in myself, a reduction in that, although it's hard to say about the correlation because I'm getting older. You're older too than that point. So maybe you're wiser. I don't know. But I
Yeah,
also
yeah.
think that there's probably been no studies done that talk about,
Mm.
you know, how people respond on certain types of diets from an aggression standpoint. I would be very interested to see some studies, some on that specifically.
Yeah, that would be cool. So for any scientists watching, please consider.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So yeah, all that is to say that the food that we consume and therefore the energy that goes into us certainly has a very real direct impact on us holistically, mind, body, emotion, energy,
Mm.
spirit. And so the little test experiments for individuals who already eat a little more plant-based, perhaps eating something a little processed, that comes in some kind of good old packaging, or whatever the case is. And then again, eating something from a local farm or from your own garden. And for both of these experiments, like really tuning in to the quality of your thoughts, the the state at which you're vibrating emotionally, the sensations in your body, how the physical body is actually responding. Like for example, I was scrolling a little bit on Instagram the other day, and then I saw a picture of these grapes and these mangoes, and my mouth just instantly like watered. It was so delicious that I had some mangoes after that. But that's to say, I don't know if I would have the same reaction eating or looking at like a dish of pasta. You know,
They have to be
evolutionarily, there are reasons for this.
they have to be good mangoes too. It's hard to find good mangoes in the United
Yeah.
States. Because I was in Ecuador
Oh,
in January and they were amazing. I never had such quality fruits and produce. It was amazing. Yeah.
well, for mangoes, you definitely got to be in the know. So this is a little, and sometime in July, I hope the event is still on.
Yeah, me too.
But there are many mango tastings and mango tasting festivals,
Mm.
specifically on Pine Island.
Ah, okay. I see. I see.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the,
yeah.
the one that I've been to is at Fruitscapes.
Yes.
Shout out Fruitscapes. And there they grow a variety of mangoes. I believe there's something like over 300 different kinds of mangoes.
Mm.
And when I was there last year, I experienced maybe like 20 something. And when you have that many mangoes in front of you, you know, each like labeled with their proper name,
Right.
you're just diving into a new world. And
Yeah.
you're really seeing how different mangoes can be from one another. So I
Yeah.
highly recommend a mango
Very interesting.
tasting
And
festival this summer.
that's in Southwest Florida, right? That's what
Yeah,
for
yeah.
people to know, people
Sorry
who are
for
not familiar.
everyone.
Okay.
Yeah. So for those who are not in Southwest Florida during the summer, I highly recommend coming down for some mango tasting town action in a few
Yeah.
months' time.
Because
Yeah.
Southwest Florida is not the summer is not the season. That's not when people tend to flock there. But for an event like that, it's probably worth it from what you're saying. I'd love to do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. And I mean there are certainly some other really cool events. This is again a little tangent and then we'll go back to some of the main topics, but
Yeah,
the summer is certainly my favorite season in Southwest Florida. Just so beautiful from the long days to the easygoing energy that's all around.
right.
As you
That's
say,
true.
that's not the time when everyone's here,
Right.
so it's certainly much more peaceful out and about. And just the sunsets are magnificent,
Mm.
some of the best on the planet, truly. Especially when you're like out on the coast, like on the beach kind of deal.
Why is that? Is it because of like less pollution? Is that maybe why?
I haven't looked into the specifics, but my hypothesis is that because it is so humid out here,
Ah,
because we're like closer to the equator, therefore there are more clouds, and the clouds are more dramatic. And really, it's the clouds that make sunsets so
yes.
magnificent.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's
Clear,
the
like a
reason.
clear day is not a good day for a sunset.
Yeah,
Clear
no, not really.
day.
Yeah. So yeah, indeed, those are some notions on one's life purpose, one's passion, and experiencing plant-based bliss. And to kind of wrap it all together, passion is a very multifaceted word. People have different ideas of what it's about. And I like to believe that we can all have multiple passions, but then experience passion by activating it. So that is to say, it can be both a noun and a verb.
Mm. All right.
And so
Yeah, I got
when
you.
more so on the verb side, it can be activated to a far greater degree with more ease when living in the framework of one's passion. And then what can also be concocted beautifully is living out one's purpose by engaging with one's passions on the noun side. And then through consistently engaging with one's passions, through consistently living one's purpose, one is able to experience bliss
Yeah.
to a greater degree. And so some like last minute notions to tie up some loose ends. So in terms of finding one's purpose, getting a little more practical, I
Very
suppose.
important. Yes.
Yeah, because it's like I can't leave without mentioning anything on that.
Yeah.
So it's like this is great. Good luck. Bye. Like
You're on your own.
yeah, yeah. So essentially, in order to find one's purpose, in my opinion, one has to live, and one has to live mindfully. That is to say, with great self awareness, and one must be more reflective than not. That is to say, I've been able to develop my purpose because throughout time, I've been able to see all the different things that I've done, at which moments I felt most fulfilled. And then within those moments, what is it that I was doing and how is it that I was going about it? And then when I see enough of these, I can try to essentially compare and correlate to see if there is a thread of consistency, whether through a theme
Yeah.
or, another kind of bigger picture concept that intertwines them all. And I also believe it is very powerful, meaningful to not only know oneself, through reflection throughout life, but also I have found powerful many different personality systems. So like personality tests, things like that.
Okay.
And I'm actually in the process of developing a course on this. So maybe in
Ah,
a future video, once it's ready,
yes.
I can share it here. Yeah. But essentially, I call this self synergy. And so it is going through multiple different personality systems, answering some different reflective questions within each system, and then throughout and more so at the end, connecting it all together and trying to pull out the different themes that are prevalent throughout them. Because for those who are not necessarily privy or fancy personality systems, in my opinion, there's a lot that's being missed out on. Because although it is true that no personality system is going to encapsulate all of you, through looking at multiple, again, one can find themes that are consistent and true. And ultimately, it's up to me as to how I interpret and apply the information. Because if I read something that I just do not agree with, well, then I can just choose to ignore it,
Right. Right.
rather than be upset about it,
Right.
or, slander
Yes.
personality tests in general. But if I do see something that really resonates with me, then it's like, oh, okay. Then I can reflect a little bit more on it. Perhaps I can see where that has been true in my life. Perhaps I can see different situations that are currently happening in which I can apply this or dive deeper into, all these different things. And also, too, this almost ties into another topic that we've mentioned before, the RAS, the RAS, the reticular activating system.
Yeah.
And so this is essentially a part of the brain that filters out information and stimulus. And so when one can be very clear as to different inclinations that one has, so that's to say, if I'm asked, what are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? How are you in relationships with family, friends, and lovers? What careers and work styles really resonate with you? how are you as a parent, what's your style, etc., etc. If I can just respond to those answers quickly, that means that I have a good working knowledge, of how I am.
Okay.
And that is not to say that we cannot change, evolve, and grow, of course. But I do believe there is significant power in aligning and amplifying what we're naturally gifted with, because that is certainly the case, that everyone has natural dispositions and inclinations
Yes.
that they were just born with or developed through conditioning, whatever. And so, in being able to respond to those quickly, therefore, I know them consciously, therefore, it's connected to my reticular activating system. And so as I go throughout life, I can detect all the different opportunities, people, and situations that align with me more so than not. So that's very powerful. Very powerful.
And so what do you suggest if you get to that point where you can detect that? Is it healthy? Are you saying are you kind of insinuating, or maybe you're outright saying it's healthy to follow along with those opportunities that are more in line with you as an individual, and then the ones, even if they're right there in front of you, if they don't align with you, you need to move away from them? Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, to a degree. I don't know so much so the moving away from, because
All right.
I truly do hold the perspective that everything teaches us, and
Yes.
everything that we experience and have experienced is for a greater purpose and reason, an opportunity to grow and evolve. But in terms of aligning to those things that really are resonant with you, I am under the impression that those things are more so in alignment with your purpose, with your life purpose,
All right.
are more so opportunities with which you can get passionate, and are more so situations in which you can feel bliss.
Okay. Okay.
Because, like, for example, if I throughout my personality systems, a theme that comes up a lot is being creative and a desire to express my creativity.
I can see that. Yeah.
Yeah. And then another is essentially to support people, and to be more so like an assistant, a servant,
Hmm.
so, and working with new people as well. So that's to say, if I personally had a job in which I'm doing like routine work, let's say like in a factory, in which there's no expression of creativity, I have a uniform, the whole deal,
Right.
and I don't find a meaning behind that work, I'm going to be much more depressive and just
Right.
overall sad with my life
I can understand. Yeah.
than if I was connected more so to notions more resonant with me. But to tap into your point again real quick, I would have insinuate this too, that although I do believe everything has its greater reasoning, and purpose for one's evolution, if one can become clear with how one is, you know, if one can identify one's strengths, the weaknesses or challenges, as I like to say, if one can identify those things with which one is resonant, then this is going to lead to a much greater, more enjoyable life experience. And also, it's a process, so I'm not trying to say like everyone, like, if you didn't get fired already, quit your job tonight,
Yeah.
it aligned to your purpose,
Well,
but
and actually, I have a question for you that's based on that line of thought.
Mhm.
If someone hasn't determined their purpose, or maybe they have determined their purpose, and their purpose is, I feel like this is maybe a part of the American dream, to finish what you're doing and retire and not really have to do anything. Okay, okay, like is that I don't know, what is that? I feel like for me, I used to feel that way. I'm just telling you, I'm 50
Mhm.
years old now, right? I used to feel that way early on. I think you are much wiser at your age than I ever was, because I used to think I just got to accumulate enough so that I can get to that retirement dream, you know, that the cultural
Yeah,
dream
yeah.
that you were talking about, right? The collective psyche is like, just do what you need to do, get what you need to get out of it, and get out. You know? And
Indeed.
then you're done. Then you're living the dream, right?
Yep, yep.
So I mean, is that someone's life purpose? Could someone say that's their purpose, and would that really be their life purpose? What do you think about that?
No. No, I don't believe that's a purpose. But it's interesting the word choice used there, you know, like get out, you know, as quick as possible. So that's to say we can, through proper alignment, you know, through connecting to what we deem as meaningful, enjoyable, compatible with our composition, not only can we get in, but then we can enjoy doing so. Because I'm under the impression that getting out, or that philosophy of wanting to get out, you know, is because one is not enjoying whatever one is in, you know, life situation. So
Right.
like going back to what we're mentioning about like long days at work, I'm trying to dip, you know, essentially that kind of thinking is just like the macro of that. Because if I'm not enjoying my job on a daily basis, well then my idea is probably that I'm not going to enjoy my working years, you know, and just like I look forward to the end of my day, I'm looking forward to the end of my career so I can dip up out of here, you know. But
Right.
life can be lived very differently than this, you know, and one can find fulfillment now in these moments, you know, no matter where one is at. Because I
Okay.
personally have some larger dreams, but in being able to construct more so a, you know, conceptual bigger picture purpose, I'm able to live that out now, you know, rather than have the philosophy of, oh, once I do this, then I'll be happy, or once I finish this, then I'll experience bliss.
The grass is always greener,
Yeah, you
right?
know, the grass can be green now if we water it where we're at,
Mhm.
for sure.
What about, okay, to look at it this from another aspect, to try to make it seem, just so I'm looking at both sides of this. What about
Mhm.
people that say, well, I don't know all their details, but I've heard this before. They s- they say they can't wait till they retire. I'm like, why? You know, I look at people, I think it looks like you enjoy what you're doing. And I said, why? What's the reason why? And they say, well, it's because at that point I'll be able to do what I want to do.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, hey, wait, you mean you're not doing what you want to do right now? And I guess that's a lot of people have that mindset, right? They're
Yeah,
just,
yeah,
they have to do this, and they don't want to do it. But
yeah.
people that I would think that were satisfied and successful.
That's unfortunately a part of that kind of, you know, collective dream. I would say more so like a nightmare.
Mm,
You know, this culture, this society treats us more so like cogs in a big machine.
okay.
You know, so serve your purpose for the machine, and then once your like work span is complete, then you can enjoy the scraps of your labor. But again,
Again,
going back to like,
yeah,
then I'll be able to do what I want to do. Everything I've been mentioning is saying that if we are clear about our reason here on the planet, we're clear as to what vibes with us, then we can experience what we want now and not in a distant future that might not even happen.
right.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's, there's so much to that, and I think a lot of it's a cultural thing, and it's just great to hear you mention that you can do this now. Is it true that anybody can do this now, or maybe there's a period of time? Let's say someone who's barely making ends meet. Maybe they have to get to a certain point financially to where they can make some different
Yeah.
choices.
Yeah.
But that's only temporary, right? That's not all their working years into the future. That's just uh,
Hmm.
slightly temporary.
Well, in connection to that, there are still steps along the way that can be connected to this. So, for example, let's say that I have this factory job, but let's say that I know that being creative, being expressive, communicative is much more resonant with me, but I still have some bills to pay, debts to pay off, situations that I can't quite get out of now. Well, then I can still train the skills and develop further the personality characteristics and traits that are in alignment, with my purpose, that are naturally stronger in me. Because the philosophy of working and developing one's strengths is to say, let's say just a very like diluted example. Let's say you have one strength. All right. For this like baby example, let's just say there are three personality traits.
All right. All
Okay.
right.
And one of them is at level 10. And then the other two, let's say it's like 3 and 2. So, in working with one's natural strengths, so that is to say, like out the gate, you came out like that 10, 3, and 2. If you work with 10 consciously, deliberately, and really amplify that development, then you'll be able to reach far higher levels. Whereas, let's say into the 20s and beyond. Whereas if you worked with the other, you know, maybe you'll get to like level 5, 6, 7 if you put in a lot of effort. But not only will they never be as strong as your natural dispositions, but you'll never be able to achieve truer mastery. So yeah, strengths is it's where it's at for sure, for sure. And there are a lot of personality tests. The primary one is the Strengths Quest by the Gallup Institute. That
All right.
one does cost a little bit of money, so one can just type in like on their search engine, Ecosia, search engine of choice. They plant trees with profits
Right.
from
I've heard of that one.
their
Yes. I've seen it.
advertising.
Yep.
Yeah, and planting trees the biggest solution for climate change. So all
True.
these different notions, but yeah, one can just search like strengths quiz, strengths personality test, something like that. So
Yeah. So much of this is on the internet. Much of it is
yeah.
free, like you said. And I also think that we're living in a time now, like never before. I mean, every year that goes by is always a new era. It seems like
Mhm.
technology is opening up so many opportunities, and I feel like in the past, every time I look at the past, I'm like, I'm so glad I don't live there. I'm so glad I didn't have to grow up in different times. When I look back in history, because
Mhm.
now I feel like we're at a time where you're like you're discussing. You want to learn about yourself. You want to learn about your strengths, the things that you're drawn towards, and you want to move in that direction. And you're gonna find your purpose if you don't know, as long as you keep moving in that direction using these different techniques you're talking about. And with the internet and the connectivity of everything, all that information is there. You can discover things you've never discovered before. You can meet up with people you've never met up with before, and that you never could any other way, so that you can get into the finest, most minute, specific things that really connect with you that you
Mhm.
could never do in the past. There would be no way to make these connections or learn these things. So it's an easier time than ever, I would think, if one does the work, like you're saying. I don't know if it's work, effort, just reflection, right?
Mhm.
You're almost guaranteed to find that hyper specific thing that really ignites your passion, right?
Yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely. And something that I thought of when you're mentioning all that was in regards to purpose. Purpose is ever evolving. Another synonym for purpose is your why. And I just like a little like asterisk caveat. I don't want anyone to get tripped up thinking that they have to create their purpose, their mission statement, their vision statement kind of deal, and then like that's it for life. then I'm trapped. With that,
One and done, right?
yeah, with that kind of thinking, there'll be a lot of procrastination, hesitation, all this and that. But yeah, as you say, the information is abundant, the opportunities are ever present, and some other little methods that one can do to go about it. Not only taking like a multitude of personality tests and etc., but I'm a big fan of interviews as well. So watching lots of interviews, and there are a few different channels that I like specifically for interviews. My favorite is Impact Theory. For those who are watching, maybe you can hop on YouTube and check some of those out.
Okay.
But if one doesn't have a clearer idea, let's say that engineering really vibes with me. So then maybe I can search up uh, engineer interview, or perhaps I've always kind of wanted to be a business owner, then business owner, entrepreneur interview, etc., etc. And basically, in watching a lot of interviews, people who already lived it and have already gone through the process are able to share their own unique insights and perspectives, which can further clarify our own thinking and can refine the way that we go about moving through life. So there have been many just like erroneous thoughts and beliefs that I've had throughout time. Like let's say, for example, because like specifics, I would have to like reflect for a second, but I want to keep it moving. Let's say, for example, this kind of materialistic goal that we've been mentioning. I just want to retire and then I'm done. Then I can do what I want. So maybe an interviewee mentions something like this, and he says, or she says, that, I used to think that I just wanted to get through my working days and then be done. But then I realized that that's not the way to go about living, and in in those moments there can be great revelations and realizations
Hmm.
when one who has had your current beliefs dispels it by showing and conveying a more evolved, developed, line of thinking. So interviews are another very powerful tool to be implementing in search and development of our purpose.
Yeah, that is a great thing. I think that I've used those tools without even realizing it. Uh,
Yeah.
just they weren't necessarily interviews, but I see how interviews could be better because there's a dialogue, there's a back and forth. But just even without an interview, I guess in the earlier days of YouTube, there weren't as many interviews on YouTube, and it was just the conveyance of thoughts. But there are so many ideas out there; it's tremendous. I just hope that people uh, they if they're not sure that they go on that search and they take a deep dive, and they really investigate what's out there, because I still feel like from what I see with most folks out there, they just use all this media and this connectivity for kind of mindless things. Not everyone,
Mm.
but I say the majority does. Just it's kind of like the old TV, like when I was younger, everyone always said TV rots your brain. You know,
Mm.
uh, the traditional TV is not even in existence anymore, but there's new things that have replaced it. I think certain types of media, they just rot your brain. You're not. I don't know. You're just like I normally think. You have to be moving forward a little bit, because if you're
Mhm.
not, you usually don't stay the same. You usually move backwards. And if you're just sitting there mindlessly processing something in a static way, uh, there's room for that, but that shouldn't be someone's continuous daily habit. They should be trying to grow, like you're saying, learn, like learning from everyone, finding these sources online, and learning about yourself ultimately, right?
Yeah.
That's how you're going to find that purpose, is watch others. And in a way, YouTube and these interviews, like you're discovering, it's kind of like the new books, right? It used to
Mm.
be books were really the only way to do that when I was growing up. Oh, read a book, got to get a book. It's still important. You need to read books. You need to learn how to read and process the written word, but. It's not really necessary anymore, like it used to be, to get those ideas. Now you can search up those specific ideas like you're talking about and just watch someone, even if you don't know how to read. There's
Yeah,
so many opportunities out there.
yeah, definitely, definitely. And I'm glad you mentioned the books because I almost forgot this.
Mm,
I wish to read more than I currently do, at least books, because I read a lot of other stuff, but not so
me
much
too.
books.
Yeah.
But yeah. So with reading, that's very powerful. Reading books specifically because it represents just like someone's or a few individuals very concentrated energy and focus. And with this, because it goes beyond just the words that are written, but it's as if like all of their life's wisdom comes together to deliver this unified package.
Right.
So yeah, books is another tremendous thing. And in terms of, using media just for like mindless entertainment, sadly and unfortunately, well, I'll say this little like, um, I forget the term, but I'll say this before I dive into this. I'll trust that most that are still watching, can handle maybe some, frowny truths to
All
a
right.
greater degree. So that's to say that in my experience, at different periods when I've been heavily mindlessly consuming media, it serves as a form of escapism,
Mm,
and so if throughout my daily life, if I'm experiencing little fulfillment, if I'm experiencing little passion, and just like little bliss, then at least the mindless content will give me some sort of stimulation that is somewhat pleasurable. But going back to the levels, which I love to use numbers with analogies and whatnot. That is to say, like the fulfillment and the joy, the excitement, the happiness, etc. That like some kind of random media will give you. Maybe it's like level one, level two. Level of difficulty, also like one or two. Because it takes like
not
no
far.
effort
Yep.
to scroll it to search something up. But on the flip side, doing something that is more productive, engaging with media more intentionally, seeking information for the sake of growth and evolution, that will give you like let's go back to near 10, level of fulfillment. But initially, if one is in the habit of doing that, then it can also be a little higher difficulty, like level 5, level 4, etc. And I think there are many reasons to this. I'm kind of like getting ahead of myself in my head. But I think one of the biggest inhibitors to just all this different kind of self-development, growth, conscious living that we've been talking to, one of the biggest obstacles that people face are subconscious stories, that they're telling themselves
Mm,
and that they're living through, which is tremendously tragic and unfortunate. Because let's say I've been watching and I've been vibing with all the information being shared, but then I don't really change and I don't do anything about it. Perhaps the story that I had in my head was like, all that is great, but I'm not worthy, you know? Or all that is great, but I'm not good enough. I don't deserve to live my purpose, to be happy, etc., etc. So these really like shadow lurking, insidious, self-limiting beliefs and stories that we tell ourselves ripple out and affect the rest of our lives. So I would almost like rewind everything I've said and start to contemplate and reflect more on these self-limiting stories, you know, than not, because truly that's just like a foundational shift when one can go from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset. somewhat related, but fixed mindset saying, I am the way I am, things are the way they are, things won't change. Whereas growth mindset saying, I can grow, I can change, I can make an impact in my life and the life of others, I can create my life consciously, etc. So yeah,
Well,
those stories.
yeah, okay. So that's the internal dialogue of the mind. Well, what effect does the people that you surround yourself have on that? Because you hear that you become like the average of the 5 people you hang out with the most.
Yep.
Is it important to select people that are going to be more understanding of these concepts versus people that would have an internal dialogue that would stop them from changing because that's how they are, like you said? Can you talk
Yeah.
about that?
Truly, that is super significant and powerful to really, it's like twofold. So as you mentioned before, your vibe attracts your tribe. So as you consciously do the work to develop, to grow, to learn more about yourself, you will attract into your life people who are more resonant with this way of living and being. But then also at the same time, there is a conscious component in which we'll have to be selective of who we choose to say yes to and no to, who we're actively pursuing to spend or invest our time with, and etc. Because certainly, people's thoughts, the thoughts and beliefs of the people closest to us have a tremendous impact on us. That quote that you mentioned, I found to be very true and resonant. And there's a notion, I'm forgetting the specific term. Uh, I don't think it's like interjecting, but it is the opposite of projecting. So
Inflection?
I believe it was like inter something, but essentially like projecting being you are taking what's inside of you and then putting it onto others.
Oh, I see.
But this opposite is to subconsciously take aspects of others around you and then incorporate it into your own like personality.
And does that happen automatically?
Yeah, I would say so. I
It
mean,
does.
just due to repetition, due to exposure. And there are many reasons for this. Again, it just like ties in evolutionarily. In order to survive back in the day, in the way day, when living was much more difficult, the group truly had to be very cohesive.
Mm.
Because everyone was needed to just to survive. And so basically with that came a greater emphasis on being accepted by the people around you, came a greater emphasis on like pleasing and supporting the people immediate to you, because if you didn't, let's say like I acted a fool, I was just like not helpful, a liability more than an asset, I'm kicked out the group and then I'm dead, because
Life
there's
or
no
death.
way I could have
Yeah.
survived.
Life or
Yeah.
death.
So unfortunately that has transferred, into the present. So where now we have a lot of these tendencies still, just again in our default psychology of wanting to be people pleasing, of seeking approval, external validation, these different notions, and with that comes the essentially like the default's inclination to want to conform more than individualize, and activate one's truer self. So again, there is a fine balance. It is certainly a dance to walk, but yeah, yeah, yeah.
We've gone pretty deep into this. I mean,
we
at
have we
least
have got deep. I love it. I was just thinking to myself, it's like I've been sharing lots of little bits,
I
tidbits. I love
I
it.
think, yeah, I feel like it's important and it's relevant to that purpose that everyone should learn to identify, and it may not stay the same, right? During your life, it may change.
Mm.
So like you said, you've always got to be learning, and that'll keep you in tune with your purpose if you haven't found it yet, or even if you have, to any changes that take place, and then changes that you need to make. And I mean, I just think it's a wonderful time to be alive, like I was saying, because
Yeah.
there are so many connections you can make. You can really go after a life like that, right? I mean, that's
Yeah.
what we're talking about is totally doable, I would say, for almost everybody. Um, in the past, even 10, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, I've been alive for over 50 years. 40 years ago, what I'm talking about would be unimaginable.
Yeah.
There are so limited, such limited opportunities out there.
Mm.
So I'm just
Yeah.
thankful that we're alive in a period like that, where, or like now, where we can have a discussion and we can, I guess, I feel like a lot of people need to hear this. And if you do, comment below. If you're hearing stuff, if you're liking stuff, comment below, tag friends, whatever you need to do.
Yeah.
Because I feel like as we are creatures of habit, like we've discussed, someone like me who is 50 years old, well, I grew up not thinking any of this would be possible when
Mm.
I was younger. The opportunities weren't there. And from a young age, you develop these patterns and they are so hard to break out of. Just like I was saying, like the TV of the past, which was brain rotting, has become the I don't know, just the junk media connectivity of today. You know, I mean, and it keeps going on. And there are some very, very wise, very intelligent individuals that will go out there and they will recognize these new opportunities that will benefit so many people, and they go after them. But I still find that most people kind of want to go back into the pattern. So hopefully this,
Mm.
what we've talked about, is challenging to you. You know, if you're out there watching this, I think it's challenging to me just listening to it, because I realize that it's not over. It's never going to be over. There's never
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
place that you get to. And if you've got there, like I brought the analogy of, like, let's say traditional retirement. I feel like you've had to sacrifice so much along the way to get there. Most people, not everyone, but most people have had to sacrifice this concept of purpose to get there. And they've probably not taken care of themselves either. So by the time they retire, they're in such bad mental state or bad physical health that the retirement doesn't even last that long. That was
Mm.
supposed to be the best time of your life, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Sadly. Yeah. So I mean, there are many different like cultural and societal like tricks like this, tricks as in just like falsities that have one living less than fulfillingly and lovingly. And to kind of tie this together to a greater degree, many philosophers, great thinkers, just history making individuals throughout time have said, the first step is to know thyself.
Hmm.
And then why I believe this is very timely is because now in these quarantine days, we have pretty much on average much more time available
True.
than not. And because we are, grounded in our homes or wherever we reside, it allows us the time to be, less influenced and stimulated by external factors.
Hmm.
Because it's very easy to lose a sense of oneself when I'm just barraged with people all day, every day, running around doing this and that. So, discovering myself will be much more difficult in those situations.
Right. Some people call it the rat race, right? That's the rat
Yeah,
race.
yeah, definitely. But right now the rat is at rest.
Yes.
So it is certainly, certainly, certainly the time to dive into these, investigations to a greater degree. And as you mentioned too, Mike, that this is a lifelong process and there never really is a final destination. But in attuning to, one's, again, purpose, living passionately, experiencing bliss in that process, the destination is reached within each step,
Mm.
rather than taking many steps to get to a fantasy of a place. So,
Yes.
yes.
I think at the end of the day, like, I believe whatever you determine your purpose is, it's all about helping others. Truly,
Yeah.
I mean, and I think that that works from a philosophical standpoint, a religious standpoint, an economic standpoint. The more
Yeah.
people that you help, the better off you're going to be. The better off everyone's going to be. That's the whole deal, I think. So So that's, my mind has been transformed over the years to where, I haven't mentioned it, but I don't think I'll ever retire, right? I mean, I don't think
Yeah.
retirement is, I think it's a bad word in a way. It has been
Hmm.
for a number of years for me, because uh, it just, I don't know. There's just some of the ideas that we talked about in this video didn't sit well with me. So
I love it.
yeah, so and I, of course, I know from running the nonprofit and from all the activities that we're involved with, there's so much effort and so much work that needs to be done to make
Mhm.
everyone's lives better, more fun, more enjoyable. And that's what I find my purpose is, at least for this moment in time, is to try to convey that to folks, that I'm not trying to sell something or say like the grass is always greener, but it, there's certain things are better, right? Uh,
Mhm.
and better for everyone, and that's really where we're coming from on that.
Yeah, truly, truly, in connecting to something larger than yourself, and serving. I would say one of my favorite quotes all time is this notion of universal responsibility by the Dalai Lama, which he says, I believe, and this is paraphrased because I like embarrassingly forgot the verbatim.
That's okay.
But
Someone can look it up online.
yeah, yeah, yeah. He says, I believe that we should work not only for our individual self, family, or nation, but for the benefit of all mankind.
Hmm.
And that can be done in smaller ways and in larger ways. You know, essentially, just in being of service
Hmm.
through purpose is when fulfillment, will be experienced. Because, like going back to my purpose, if I were to say my purpose is to increase the levels of confidence, creativity, compassion, connection, and care within myself and me only, that's going to be a different internal experience
Right.
than if I'm focusing on assisting everybody that I can, touch and affect. So, yeah, yeah, indeed.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully this video has touched and affected people in a positive way, and at the very least, started you thinking along this process if you haven't thought about this before. Because I know that I'd say that this is determining your life purpose is kind of like determining your goals. A lot of people say they want to do it or they have them, but they really don't have anything written down. They really haven't spent a lot of time
Mhm.
just on goals. But life purpose is even more, I'd say, specific and maybe harder to get to than just goals. So hopefully this has inspired people to
Yeah.
take some time. Like you said, this is the time, right? This during this time of coronavirus, you've got the time. You may never have this time again. That's something I've
Mhm.
learned in business and in life in general. When an opportunity shows up, you should take it. If that opportunity looks like something that you probably want to do, you need to take it, because these opportunities, they show up and they disappear just as quickly,
Mm.
and they may never return. You may never have a time like this again to for self-analysis and diving deep into thought and information like we have now. So
Yeah, certainly, certainly. And like a final note, I too hope that this has been more beneficial and inspirational. You know, I think one of my own personal like shadow tendencies is to come across as a little more like arrogant and condescending than not.
I
And
wouldn't say
all right,
that.
cool, cool. Because certainly, that wasn't my intention if anyone took it this way. But also too, like I like to poke at the low ego, challenge individuals, but it comes from a love-based place because ultimately I'm here to benefit the planet, and I find great purpose and fulfillment and activating, assisting others, and also playing their part, in this grand healing, this grand awakening, this grand activationing and aligning that I believe we're experiencing to a much greater degree, especially now at this time. It's certainly, I'm under the impression that this is like a milestone shift moment, in human history, possibly. So, yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited. But thank you for watching, everybody.
Yeah, I'm great to hear that too. Great to hear that you
Yeah.
believe that. That's wonderful. So how do folks get in touch with you? They want to get in touch with you, learn more about you. How can they do that?
Yeah. So, Facebook would probably be the best place. So that's Xylo Smith Pajares or Pajares. So that's XYLO, like a little xylophone, and then Smith hyphen Pajares. And then through there, they'll be able to connect to some other social media channels. I'm taking this time to kind of reboot a lot of my social media like intentions, using them for more platform for upliftment. So yeah, they'll be able to
All right,
find me like that.
great. Well, this has been like our longest video ever. I think we're
Yeah, yeah.
well over an hour and 20 minutes.
Nice.
I think it was great. I'm glad we did this new format of going directly live like we are, because otherwise we would be subject to that 30-minute limit that we've done in the past. So,
Yeah.
so this was a good time to do it. And also remember, aplantbaseddiet.org. We got a YouTube channel. If you want to replay this, it's wherever you're watching it now. You can replay it as soon as it finishes processing when we're done, or you can subscribe to the YouTube channel at aplantbaseddiet.org on YouTube. And stay tuned for more with XYZo, Director of Mindfulness, in the near future.
Yes. Thank you.
All right, you're welcome.